Section 27 is representing Gauteng, the Centre for Child Law, and the parents of two pupils in a case that will be heard in the High Court. This case, which is set to be heard on the 14th of June, that's tomorrow, is against the South African Council for Educators for imposing lenient sanctions on two teachers who pleaded guilty to assaulting pupils in their classroom. Section 27 is taking the council to the court and requesting it to consider the decisions it made in respect of the two educators. Let's discuss this now with Section 27's attorney, Demichelle Petherbridge. Demichelle, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Just give us a high level. When did this take place? What are the key issues at play here?
Yes, so as you mentioned, there were two very young learners who were the victims of corporal punishment, one in Limpopo, one in Gauteng. The incidents, one took place in 2015, the other in 2019, and in 2019, Section 27 decided to write to SACE on behalf of the parents of these two learners to ask for them to investigate. SACE did investigate, there were disciplinary hearings held, but as you mentioned, SACE gave extremely lenient sanctions to these teachers. To let you know, they were struck off the roll, which means they're not allowed to teach at all, but this was suspended for a period of 10 years. And on top of that, they were fined 15,000 Rand, of which 5,000 Rand was suspended. So effectively, all they received was a fine of 10,000 Rand that they could pay over a period of a year. I think that's just over 800 and something Rand a month, which is a little bit less than what we pay for our annual DSTV subscription, for example. And what we're saying is that this kind of sanctioning is too lenient. It's not sending out the message that corporal punishment is actually prohibited in South Africa. And
so what would send a message? What kind of punishment would send a message?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're not necessarily asking for harsher sentences. We just need more appropriate sentences. So we need SACE to start considering the best interests of the child, the rights of learners, which at this point are not coming into the equation when they start sanctioning teachers. We need them to have a child-centered approach, which allows for children and parents to actually participate in the entire disciplinary process and actually have a say in the sanctioning and what they want teachers to be sanctioned with. We need them to have sanctions that consider corrective and rehabilitative measures like anger management and teaching of non-violent forms of discipline. And in cases of serious assault, we want these teachers to be removed. So we don't want cut and paste sanctions anymore, where every educator who's guilty of corporal punishment gets the same thing. We need considered appropriate sanctions.
Yeah, now I know you're using the term appropriate. It's not harsh. I'm just trying to get a sense from what you are saying. Somebody's child has been assaulted, and they plead guilty, the teacher who's responsible, and they get away like by paying a fee, as you said, for paying for a TV license every year. What would then be appropriate more than that? Would a suspension be appropriate, for example? Would, what is it, anger management? I mean, just give me a sense what you're thinking, because as you're engaging with the teachers, with the departments, with the parents, I mean, you must be having some thoughts. I know you're a lawyer, you're coming from a legal side, but what kind of ideas are floating around?
So the kind of thing I want to see is, for example, in one of our cases, the teacher had actually hurt two children, one to the point of his nose bleeding, the other one who received head injuries. And she received precisely the same sanction as a teacher who had just assaulted one learner. So in cases where it's a repeat offender, in cases where the severity of the corporal punishment is much more than just a slap on the wrist. So, example, if a child starts bleeding, or if their arm is broken, or if they've been thrown across the classroom, then, of course, harsher, more different kind of sanctions will need to be implemented in these cases. And we don't want teachers to just pay a fine and then go back to school, which is exactly what's happening. We need them to undergo some kind of rehabilitation and corrective measures. So it is a difficult question to ask, because it's going to depend on every single case, how often the teacher does it. Should the teacher be teaching at all? Is it safe for the teacher to still be around learners? What is the extent of the injury that was inflicted? So there's a range of factors that are going to determine what an appropriate sanction is.
Okay, so this is coming up in court tomorrow? That's
right.
Yeah, and do you expect a long, drawn-out process? Because there'll be several parties. US Section 27 are just one of them, representing the parents and the Centre for Child Law.
So we don't expect it to be too drawn out. We're expecting it just to take place tomorrow in the Pretoria High Court. It's us that are going to be making argument. SACE is representing the educators. SACE will be represented as well. And then we're going to have what's called a friend of a court, which is the Children's Institute, which is also going to make submissions. So we don't expect it to be a very drawn-out matter, but we're really confident that the judge will see that there are really serious human rights violations here, that the ban on corporal punishment is not being taken seriously, and we need systemic change. We need SACE to change the way that it's sanctioning teachers. It's not just a once-off solution.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I heard you clearly. You said that children are also going to be in court. I hope not, because they've been traumatized already.
No, the children won't be in court. There's a group called Children's Institute, and they will be coming in as friends of the court, and they will be giving submissions as well.
Okay,
so there'll be three parties at court tomorrow.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll find out afterwards from you, Demichelle Petherbridge, from Section 27, what will happen in this particular case. A very interesting case, because it could set a precedent for future similar type cases where teachers plead guilty to assaulting children in a classroom and get away pretty much with a slap on the wrist instead of what they want now, an appropriate punishment.